thing is ice cold. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we're back here in the LCD Steam Deck that we've done a lot of crap to. This thing's been through a lot, and it's still chugging along. This was the water-cooled Steam Deck. This was the Franken-Deck Steam Deck. This was all the other Steam Deck. The LCD, yeah, it's been through a lot. What we're doing today is we're actually gonna upgrade the water cooling system, and I'm gonna explain real quick why I'm actually upgrading it. I was having the hardest time overclocking this thing in almost 2025. Valve has made it very difficult, and finally I was able to figure it out. If you want to know how to do that, let me know in the comments below. I can make a small video about it. It's actually not too difficult, but it is still kind of a pain. What we're gonna do is, now that since we can overclock, we are gonna actually turn it into a proper water cooling system. And it's actually not a proper, I don't know if anyone's done this before. I'm sure people has done something similar like this, but probably not in the way that I'm gonna do it. We're gonna make a hybrid system. Basically, we are gonna make a closed loop water system that is gonna be cooled by a Peltier. So this right here is my DIY Peltier. It's a 9-volt Peltier, and we have some copper plates sandwiched on there, and that was all because of that. This actually used to be on here, but now we're gonna add it to our water cooling system. Why are we adding the Peltier to the system? The main reason why we are adding the Peltier to the system is because this radiator, my DIY radiator, is super ineffective, and that's saying it nicely. It's just not gonna cool as much as you would want it to. We gotta ditch it. Plus, we are gonna have to break down this loop. What we're gonna really do is we're gonna take this radiator, we're gonna rotate it 90 degrees, plop this bad boy on there, bada bing bada boom, we're done. Alrighty, so everything's on, everything's working, fan is on, Peltier is on. It is cold. So for context, desk is 24.5. Back of here is 21.3. This one should still be around 22. It shouldn't get too cold. We haven't turned the pump on. Yeah, let's turn the pump on now. Actually, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till this gets ambient's about 23. This thing's at 20 degrees. Working so much better with this bigger heat sink. So ambient temperature is 21.8 right now. I wish I could make this fan go faster. I'm gonna swap out the power brick. We're at 16, 18. It's a little bit all over the place. Reading on this metallic surface is kind of hard, but I definitely believe that it's in around the 13. Let's go. It's 9 degrees on top here. You see that? That's crazy. So, like we were talking earlier, the problem is you do not want this directly onto your Steam Deck because it will cause condensation. We are getting very, you see that? You see this right here? See that moisture? That's the condensation. So this thing's like definitely below 5. So let's turn the pump on before this water freezes, because this water will freeze. Pump is on. It's running. We can see the bubbles. And what should happen is this should warm up. Oh my God, the pump. This thing is ice cold. Wow, this is working super well. It's saying it's 22, but it's definitely cooler than 22. All right, I'm gonna let this run for a little bit. Ooh, even the reservoir is cold. Let's see how cold the reservoir is. 18 degrees. The reservoir is at 18 degrees. So I would say this is a more accurate temperature than this, because the surface is reflective, so it doesn't take a good temperature. Yeah, 18 degrees feels right about right. We'll let it run for a while. Heat coming off this thing is considerable. I wish this fan was stronger, and then we could definitely get more out of it. But all in all, it's running pretty good. Oh my God, I can't wait to attach this to a Steam Deck. So the thought is, let's wait about 10 minutes and see if this thing gets any condensation on it. Because over here, it's gone. The condensation's gone because the cool water has now moved throughout the system and its overall temperature has calmed down. But if we leave this thing on for a little bit longer, I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to condensate there again. The question is will it start to condensate here? The good thing is we have flowing water, so that means this is less likely to freeze. The water is less likely to freeze in a block, but it's still a possibility because it might not be cooling it enough. Which case is we might need to put some antifreeze in here. It's gonna be wild. And the reason why the antifreeze is so the water doesn't freeze up on us. Wow, that's cold. Wow, that's working so well. 16 degrees in the water pump. And we're going off the water pump because, like I said, we can't measure off that. Cool. We're going to let this sit for about 10-15 minutes and we'll test it again. Okay, let's test this thing out. I'm going to do a condensation test real quick. There is no condensation. Oh, maybe very, very light. Let's see the temperature in here. 12 degrees. 10 degrees. Wow. For Fahrenheit people, it's 49 degrees. And here, oh, it's just cold. It's freaking cold. This thing is working perfectly. Now, we're going to figure out how to get this on the Steam Deck. Just so everyone knows, there is a thermal pad between the water block and the Steam Decks. 4,500 RPM on the fan to heat up quite a bit. It's cooling itself off right now. We're going to see it level out. But just so you know, let's go on the plastic right here because it's easier to hit this plastic. 43 degrees on the plastic right above the radiator. Radiator itself is 41. All right, this has come back down to 71, 72. We're going to call it there. So we're going to say this is essentially ambient for it. So not ambient, I mean just heat soak. We're just going to call it there. It'd probably get a little bit warmer, but I really want to see how well this thing works. So we're going to kick the pump on. There we go. Pump is on. You can't see it, but it is on. You might be able to hear it. 41, I think, is where we were at on the reservoir. It is now at 31. The backplate has dropped. Wow, the backplate's already dropped 6 degrees. We're at 65 here. So it's cooling down. And so let's see how long it takes. Running for about 6 minutes now. And on the back plate, we have a temperature of 28 degrees on the back plate. So that was a drop from like what, 40, 41. And then this water block is 28. So it's dropped considerable amount of temperature.
2 days later.
We have our OLED Steam Deck here in the background. Just for a reference point, you already know that this one is as cool, maybe slightly cooler than the OLED now, thanks to the water cooling system and obviously the fan mod, things like that. So this thing is actually right now, even though it's been running for about 15 minutes, is about 2 degrees cooler than the OLED. And the OLED just turned on like 5 minutes ago, so that thing's already warming up on its own. The water pump's not on. The Peltier is not on. We're going to let both systems warm up a bit before we get into it. But before we do anything, let's talk about how this thing is mounted. So it's pretty much mounted as it was before. Got those 2 screws, compression. We got thermal pad underneath this. That's it. Simple. Over here, very similar, except, we have our Peltier, which is the white thing. We have our copper shims, which I glued on. I can't take off. And everything's zip tied together and double-sided sticky tape to basically hold it to the backplate. Surprisingly, it holds up pretty well with that little piece, but it's mostly because the water cooling system's kind of holding it up because we're held up with these bolts over here that are JB welded to the back of the backplate. So it's pretty, it's chunky, but you can still handheld it. Definitely not portable anymore because we are tethered. We have 3 wires, 2 of which have their own adapters. Other one's just a simple USB plug. Let's talk about these adapters. So this is 12 volt, 1.5 amp, and this is actually just powering the fan. So altogether, that fan is pulling at most 18 watts, and very much similar here. And this is the one powering the Peltier, 9 volt, 2 amps. And so basically we're using about 42 watts worth of cooling on this Steam Deck. But you can see already, just having, even though nothing's plugged in, it's still running cooler than the OLED. And that all has to do with the fan mod and the fact that we have a big copper heat sink right here, that's just absorbing all the heat coming from the Steam Deck. So it'd probably take a solid 15-20 more minutes for this to get fully heat soaked, and we'll probably be still lower than the here, but definitely will heat up eventually, because it's just going to take a really long time. But I don't have time to wait for that. You can see that they're pretty close, within margin of each other. This one just creeped up to 73 for a quick second. So we'll let them heat up for another 5-10 minutes, and then we'll turn everything on and see the difference between the two. Play 5 minutes, maybe give or take a couple more. But before we get into anything, just look at the screen brightness between the two. The LCD versus the OLED. OLED is so much brighter. I don't know if the camera can show that, but man, the OLED screen is beautiful. 73, 77, jumping. Those are like kind of peak numbers. Actually 74 over here. About 2 to 3 degree difference between the two, but remember, we kind of knew that this thing ran a little bit cooler than the OLED, but let's see how much cooler it can run. So remember, we're peaking here 75, peaking here, peaking over there 67, 77 over there on the G. We're just gonna go pick the higher number. We're gonna pick the GPU. All right, so let's turn everything on. First thing we're gonna do is turn on the Peltier, but before we do that, let's just take some temperature readings. So we're gonna measure off the back of the back plate. So we're at 37.6. Right here at the top of the back plate, a reservoir 23.7 on that 24 range. Let's just do this one more time. Wow, back plate's at 44.6, so it's pretty warm. I mean, let's turn everything on. So this is our fan, this is our Peltier, and what we should notice, wow, this fan is blowing hard now. This thing's gonna start cooling off real quick. Okay, so I haven't turned on pump yet, only because I want this thing to get super chilled first, and then I want to turn it all on. Give it about a minute. You can already see the temperature's already dropping. It's already dropping, and we haven't even turned the pump on yet. We're at 72 from, was it 75, 76, 70? Yeah, I think it was 75. Right now it's 72. Wow, so much cooler. And we haven't turned the pump on yet. So let's let this run for about a minute. Let it run for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll test out with the pump on. Our temperatures have dropped considerably. 71. We're still actually climbing here on the OLED. Remember, this is pretty much stock OLED. We do have a back cover. I'm sure that's keeping it warmer, but pretty much stock Steam Deck OLED. No pump on. We've already dipped below 70 degrees. We're going to take a quick reading on the back plate. Get it on the same spot. We went from 44 to 38. Reservoirs at 24 now. Let's go ahead and let's turn the pump on. Basically, the hardest thing about here is making that reservoir. You can hear it now. You can actually see the water moving, see those air bubbles. All right, let's look at this temperature. 68, 67. It is considerably colder now. Obviously, we knew that was going to happen. Pump wasn't running. I didn't notice any condensation on the Peltier. Considerable delta now, 60, 64, 63. Kind of see 65 here and there. Let it run for a little bit, let it circulate. This one's climbing up. We're at 78 here on the OLED now. I won't lie, this one is charging now. I only have one charger cable with me right now. I do not know where my extra two are. I have no idea, so it is what it is. All right, let's go ahead. We'll let this run for another 5 or so minutes. We'll see where this thing settles off. We'll take some temperature reading, and we'll wrap this thing up, because we clearly can see that it runs way cooler than OLED. From here, even if we take the highest number of 4 degree, that's a 14 degree delta between the two now. Obviously, we got 42 watts of cooling and all this bullshit behind it. But if you have a stationary Steam Deck, I'm just saying, it runs super cool, and we haven't even overclocked it yet. I guarantee we can overclock this and still run cooler than the OLED. It's been a couple minutes. We've actually put it on charge for about 3-4 minutes now, and we're at 61 degrees, 62 here. I think we might be able to see 59, so sub 60, but I doubt we'll hold it. Our CPU is well below 60 though, 58, 59 here, bouncing. Our OLED is peaked up to 79, 75 on the CPU. Clearly the deltas are freaking wild. Now we're holding 61, 60, so 79, it's pretty crazy. 18 degree-ish delta from the OLED. That's wild. Obviously, we got 0 performance gains from it. Oh, OLED just turned off. Did the OLED overheat? Or just shut itself off? I think it just shut itself off. Let's take the backplate temperature. This little spot right here. 27 degrees. That's almost a 20 degree delta on the backplate itself. Let's see the reservoir. Where are we at on this? Reservoir is at 23 degrees. That's pretty incredible. Do I think this thing's gonna go below 50? I mean below 60? I doubt it. Maybe we might have a peekaboo at 59. See, there you go, 59. Well, we won't hold 59. Probably hold at best 60. Because right now we're between 59 and 61. It might get cooler. Who knows? Obviously, if we ramp the fan speed to 7,000, we'll get below 50. But with the cooler at 4,500 RPMs or 4,200 RPMs, I don't think we'll get sub 60. And if we do, we won't hold it for very long. Here, though, everything's just getting hotter. What have we learned today? We learned that when it comes to water-cooled systems, a radiator is extremely important. A good radiator. Obviously, this radiator is definitely overkill. It's not even really a radiator. If you think about it, there's technically 2 radiators on this thing. It is huge. It is bulky. It takes a lot of power. This more power to run this than it is to run the whole Steam Deck. It's 42 watts there. I think the OLED's pulling half of that amount. Even with all that said, if you're trying to get the most epic cooling performance you can, look at this, 58 degrees, out of your Steam Deck, and you're just trying to push it to the limit. A closed-looped water cooling system, which radiator is a Peltier, you can't really go wrong with that. You can't really go wrong with that.